What's up, folks? Casual Dad here for more Warhammer Combat Cards, and it's pretty funny. I forgot how crisp and big it feels on the full screen because I haven't played on my computer in a couple weeks. It's been a minute. So we've got balance changes, we've got the new ladder season, we've got a couple patch notes, we've got a lot of little kind of roughshod changes run around in a bunch of different places. So I'm going to put them all together and cover them all at once. And this is going to be live on Wednesday, so happy Apocalypse Rewards Day if you've been playing the Apocalypse mode enough to get those rewards. Let's jump right in. So I'm going to actually look at the balance changes first. Mostly they're Eldari, so we're going to start with, we'll read my buddy's words here. Greetings, citizens. This season I'm struggling for a quick, witty connection between the Krieg and warp spiders. So give me a minute while I grab a shovel and dig my way out of this hole before this analogy becomes too much of a tangled web worth the wait. With that out of the way, we can flicker jump into this season's changes. We've got a number of changes to the Eldari, particularly focused on all the aspect warriors, for the most part increasing their points and stats to make them feel a bit more like the elite of the Eldari line like they should be. Which, yeah, a lot of the time I use aspect warriors as kind of my chaff cards. So it's cool to see them get a little bit of a bump up. I think with the scale of combat cards going up into super heavies, they still fall mostly on the chaff line, but we'll see. All right, so in addition to that, we've got a few scatter changes to other factions, primarily looking at some trait swaps to give the best possible impact. First up, we have Eldari, the Howling Banshee. The previously 5-point Howling Banshee Exarch, now 8, got +3 cost, +20 wounds, and +20 melee. This is one that's been really high level in my collection for a really long time and been a 5-point staple of my decks for a really long time too. But really, that was for the 5-point cost. Now coming in at 8, a little bit more of a premium, but topping out with 50 base melee, 8 with fear. This is a really terrific card in. It's a good filler for Lilith decks. It's good. It's excellent filler now in a melee Rakarth deck, but of course particularly good in an Avatar deck, especially run with Jane Zar, the Howling Banshee Phoenix Lord. So it works out well. I like it. As mentioned, we're looking at increasing points in a number of aspect warriors to make them feel a bit more elite. The Howling Banshee is a great example as one of the cheapest bodyguards available in the faction. At a 3-point increase, she's still very affordable. Now she's right in line with the Dark Reaper, who's coming up next. But now with +20 wounds, her fear goes a bit further, true, especially with Rakarth. And +20 melee means she's delivering a much more powerful punch. She's actually on par with the Incubus now, who comes in a couple of points premium, but I take him to actually do damage, and now I can do the same with her too, which is cool. She should be able to do a lot more than just be fodder for Ratkarth or Avatar decks, while still being able to fill that role too. Yeah, so she's still cheap, still a great budget filler piece, but now is impactful while she's being a filler, which is nice. Love it. Love to see this. I had a joke. I don't remember what it was. We'll get back to that. And then we've got Elian Twar. Ooh, Twar. Really? Is that? Wait, no, surely not. Wow, I've missed the I in his name this entire time. Or maybe that was added as part of his glow up. +5 cost up to 13. Wow, okay, I actually missed that. But +30 wounds, significant, and then +15 range. So dramatic increase to damage output. Still at near max level. I'm at that last damage buff here. He's gonna be one of my next and one of my first max level cards. He's been on that path for a long time. He's currently getting my rare wild cards for Eldari. Still good. I gotta say, this combination of range damage and cost feels a little bit on the high side, but considering that he goes so well with cards that can either give him more impact from his ranged attacks, like Illic, or somebody like Zephyrblade, whose name I remembered for once, who can really bump up that range over the course of a game, it still is decent. Like, it's not bad. And he still is pretty great for a Lilith deck, and he's just better. So he only costs 5 points more. 5 points is a tricky one because if you're adding 5 points, that's an entire card. The Eldari have a big, thick spread of 5-cost cards. So was the +15 base range and +30 wounds enough to justify losing an entire 5-point card? Probably, but it's close. Let's see what this is. What do we got? Elion definitely doesn't feel like an Exarch. Yeah, I forgot he was an Exarch. And now with some new aspect warriors on the horizon. Oh yeah. It's time he felt like a unit leader. With a big bump in cost, he gets a substantial amount of wounds and a hefty increase in range, allowing him to maximize his barrage and make him a potent mid-range, mid-cost damage dealer. Yeah, he falls there. I haven't really gotten much chance to play with him. I've really been enjoying the buffs to melee characters. So far this season, I've been playing a lot of melee and haven't tried this guy out much, but I'm going to. I can play some games with him today. Next up, we have Thiel, another one on the docket who's been high level in my collection for a really long time, who is likely to be max very soon. Very soon, TM. Plus 2 costs, so it went from 6 to 8. Okay. Plus 10 wounds and plus 10 range, which is nice. Still has the not 0 melee. Good ranged attack to go nicely with that precision shot. And then decent bump in wounds. He's still definitely on the lower side, but and lower by quite a bit. No, he's got a couple more wounds than Irilith, even at a lower level. So if I get him up there, yeah, okay. So he out wounds her by a little bit. Uh, Keeping with the trend, Thiel was only marginally better than a regular Guardian. With these in which, I mean, Dire Avengers, he definitely stands out as a more premium ranged infantry choice while still being very affordable. Dire Avengers, historically on the tabletop, being more expensive, having the same toughness, but a better save, better ballistic skill, better weapons. Like they're better, but not more durable. And so it's always a little bit of a toss up whether they're actually better than Guardians or not, especially because they're enough more expensive that it's like 1.5 Guardians to a Dire Avenger, which adds up fast. Um, yeah, it's cool to see, and all of this really benefits kind of the core mechanics cards of the Eldari faction. That's what I enjoyed most about this update, is it really does kind of fill in the mid pieces, like not quite the gaps, but it fills in the spots in the middle of these decks, in between the truly powerful cards, but the ones that really bring the individual warlord mechanics together. So that's cool. Da, da, da. This is a fun one too. The Veil Walker, the Shadow Seer. You're in 20, right there you are. Cylindri Veil Walker, plus 5 wounds, plus 5 range, plus 5 psychic, plus 5 melee. So plus 5 to everything except cost. Veil Walker had been nerfed in the past as one of the few Eldari cards with shields. Now there are more. She was often spammed in Lilith decks to recycle the shield. Still true. While this is still possible, with the option of more shielded cards since then, and with Lilith not being playable in PvP, rip. I mean, I would trade this buff for playing Lilith in PvP. Just saying. Well, this is still added up. Sheila added that its nerf is being somewhat reversed. By making her more balanced in Lilith decks, she was fairly unplayable with other warlords. Yeah. When the all-round increase and therefore versatility should mean she can be much more widely used. Now, I was still bringing Veilwalker in my Eldrad decks, and she's still pretty great there because having a tar pit that also has a psychic attack is really good, and she's the only psychic card that has shields. So I'll take it. Pretty exciting, but as you can see here, even if we get up to max level, the nerf was pretty devastating. So these stats are not impressive, even with the +5 to base. They will do something, but mostly you're looking at a durability tar pit that has an upside of having a psychic attack and having a reasonably decent one if you pump in things like Eldrad's trait and then also Inspiring Presence. And often paired with Yvraine, you got both. So it works out. Still not really a powerful card, but still a really good utility piece because of those shields, even though there are more Eldari cards now with shields. Other factions have so many shields and so much durability that Eldari don't have. It's still really nice to have that and make the Veil Walker not just be a tar pit. So I appreciate that change. This one surprised me. I didn't think this guy was underperforming at all, so I'm a little surprised he got a buff. As you can see already, Trileorn the Silent, -4 cost. This guy has, if you put him in an Eldrad deck with other Psychers, the combination of that Psychic Link, Eldrad's trait, and then that Warp Surge, this guy is one of the hardest hitting cards in the 30-point range in the entire game, in very specific combinations, in very specific decks. So I get that. So I understand why maybe a buff was needed, but it is interesting to see this because Psychic Rakarth was one of the boogeymen of the game for a long time, where you have a Rakarth deck that constantly builds up wounds as it kills things, built around a bunch of Psychers. A lot of those pieces have been nerfed, but I think overall the meta has moved more towards counters to that, so it's not as powerful as it was. But it was pretty impressive for a while there. One of the biggest issues for Eldar Psychic decks is space. And while Trioliorn's raw damage output has always made it a very appealing choice for these decks, given how fragile he is, his investment is pretty high. Given how long he can stay on the board, no, given how long he can stay on the board. Rather than dilute his identity as a major glass cannon piece, reducing his cost helps psychic decks in general, very nice, and gives room for more potential support to compensate for his fragility. And I really appreciate that it was a cost change for him, because I always really want to put him with this guy, who's really powerful as well, but comes in at a huge premium for low hit points. And it was always hard to fit them both into a complete deck that had everything you needed. Now, my card's a high enough level where I can do that with a little bit more confidence, but still, if they're lower level, or just kind of in general, it's really hard to get, say, these three in a single deck with the Warlord you want, with everything you want in it. Now you can much more comfortably, and it's pretty strong right now. So I really like that. So that's great, because the triple attack types are great. Now, I love this nod because this is the one Phoenix Lord that I know of that didn't get a new model in the past 20 years. We are looking at Karandras, the Lord of the Striking Scorpions. -2 cost, which I'm actually, it's with these cost changes, I look at these cards, and a lot of the time I don't remember the previous cost, especially if it's a card that I didn't run very much, which Karandras wasn't. So I guess he used to be 37, putting him at most expensive of the Phoenix Lords, where all of the others are 35, which makes no sense because he's the weakest both in this and in the tabletop. Poor guy. We gotta give this guy some love. Karandras has always stood out as one of the weakest options for the Phoenix Lords, so his cost has been brought down to align with the others. Added to that, we've increased. Oh, excuse me. So -2 cost and plus 20 wounds, so he's more durable. We've increased his wounds to make him a bit more durable and differentiate him more from the other Phoenix Lords options like Baharoth and Jane Czar. Jane Czar still stands out long term with just the volume of wounds and fear. Really durable, doesn't have the ranged attack. Being the ambush lord, the combination of ready and outflank means that Karandras hits the board with a really significant punch in one turn. He's got more balanced stats. He's got a higher range and a decent melee as well. Mine is still low level, and he's pretty good at this point. Also has a big chunk of wounds, so he's definitely more of a brawler, like a melee punchy brawler who's going to stay on the board a bit longer than the others. But there isn't really a place for that. When you go down 2 points, you get this guy who's just better at what he does. Um, yeah, I appreciate the attempt on this guy. I think he is going to see more play, but I still don't think he stands out enough to really be an impactful card. Hopefully, when he gets his new Phoenix Lord model someday, it'll be worth giving him a little bit of the spotlight himself, too. He's one where it would be cool to see a trait like a, and this is a thing too, thinking about the Phoenix Lords, so the things that Ildari are missing that could also be added to the other cards as well are a stealth mechanic. Rangers and Striking Scorpions have a lot of infiltrate and stealth, where they could maybe not take damage for a turn. I don't know how that would work out in combat cards. That's a really tricky one to balance. Or some kind of mobility mechanic, like where a card is able to redeploy. That's something I want to see with Warp Spiders, but I could see, like, you've got ready and outflank as twin traits. One could be a, I don't know, deploy to replace a present card, whereas the one could be the mobility of actually just redeploying to a different place on the board. I don't know. Anyway, but I would love to see these guys represent the character of the Striking Scorpions on the tabletop a little bit better. And likewise with Swooping Hawks and Howling Banshees, or excuse me, Swooping Hawks and Warp Spiders, both I think could definitely highlight things a little bit, highlight the personality of the units a little bit better. Okay, yes. Next up, we go to Necrons, but before we jump to that, I'm going to jump around a little bit to some of the changes here, because there are some artwork changes that I've glossed over a little bit, and I'm going to miss some, so please do call me out if I miss some of these. But Fire Dragon, and you could actually see for a brief flicker there was the original artwork when I click on that. So there's the new Fire Dragon. Enjoy it. Feels like a very specific kind of craft world maybe, but also I think tones down the bright orange a little bit. Now my personal favorite color scheme from my Fire Dragons is to really amp up the orange and give them gold helmets. I always like that touch, to make them just like really over the top ostentatious. Let's see, I think that's mostly it for the Eldari, except we do have the new Phoenix Lords. Although Baharoth was the only one who was still waiting on a model. Oh man, that is just armor sweet. When you see pictures of the model, it mostly highlights the wings. You occasionally see the headdress, which of course is a little silly, but you don't see just like the little details in the armor plating and the sword, of course, and the last gun. Like, he looks good. I like Baharoth. I always liked Baharoth. I have a funny soft spot for his ugly old model. And then we do have the Swooping Hawks that I don't have these cards. We have a new Dark Reaper non-Exarch, falls to the 10-point range. That's an interesting one, precision shot. We've got the new, this one may actually be new, not be new. Some of these are not new. This one is. Oh, I love the pose on that. I haven't actually seen these new models very much, so this is a new one for me. That's pretty cool. And this though is one where like I get that outflank is the most appropriate rule for them, but we could do better. Warp spiders are so cool. And I always loved, I don't know if the rules are like this now, but they've always had a rule where they can do like a super fast move, but every time they do it, there's a risk that one of them gets eaten by the warp. So I don't think that could be reflected mechanically, but it's pretty cool. I always like that. Then we got a new Fire Dragon Exarch, and that guy's got the full-on orange. I love it, and the big old fire pike. Big game hunter, of course. Then we've got the Warp Spider Exarch with the what are they called? The blades. I forget what those are called. Mm, razor sharp. Nope. Yeah, I try not to visualize too much how the Warp Spider gun works. It's pretty gross. We got this guy's not new. Oh yeah, and then we've got Lycus. Crazy looking thing. That's a pretty cool one. Shields and target acquired. Yeah, interesting. Okay, legendary, of course. It's hard to, this is one of those ones where you're looking at balanced stats. Same cost as the other Phoenix Lords. Hit points are on the higher side. Shields, legendary, so you get up to max shields, and then a good range and a good melee. It's a really interesting combination of stats that'll fit in anywhere. But the challenge with balanced stats is it's always hard to see where they really stand out. Where it's very easy to min-max, where you go max melee, max ranged, max hit points. But something that does all of these things well is a little bit challenging to rate. But I think this is going to be a really strong card once people get it leveled up. And then, of course, we've got Fuegan. I love Fuegan. And this one, I love the traits on this guy. I really wanted to highlight this. He's got Big Game Hunter, of course, because, you know, Fire Dragon. And then Endless. Endless on an Eldari ranged card is great. This guy's going to see a ton of play, even if Endless is a secondary trait and he's Epic, so it's hard to get there. That makes him really fun. And man, I just love looking at the details in the armor. Oh my god, he's cool. Anyway, yeah, Fuegan is awesome. And of course, I talked to Harry a little bit about this one, how much I love the trait, and he mentioned that the rebirth mechanic of Fuegan is one of his iconic pieces. So this is very excited about this. Shout out to Discord user Veribaka, because I actually missed this card in the pool when it first came out. I didn't see it in there. Okay, so let's jump to Necrons to finish up the balance changes. It's not a long list. I'm taking a long time with this. Hopefully it's not too long. All right, here we got Ronak Fa, who nobody knows the names of these things because nobody knows the names of these things. Where are you, buddy? He's cheap. Ronak Fa, there you are. I was looking right at him. Yep. Totally familiar with this card. I've used him a ton. Circle Hyrotech Serpal Apprentech. I do love the attempt to make the lore and text and names of the Necron stuff really flavorful and cool, but it does come out just kind of hard to read. Change from Scout to Target Acquired. Really appreciate that because the Scout, he was sort of a secondary pick for Imhotep the Stormlord decks for the ready to do the free damage. I think Target Acquired at this price range for a balanced melee and ranged card is much more impactful. He's now a very tempting pick to take with your Trazyn decks, and Trazyn is by a good bit probably the most competitive of the Necron Warlords right now. One of the more competitive cards in the game. Ronak Fa has been fairly consistent in their poor performance since release, woof. And with plenty of access to readies, or benefits from readying, Scout wasn't doing enough for him. Add to that melee is the less popular of the two, of the two Necron attack types. He didn't get any stat changes. We've switched Fa up a bit. Necrons have no melee-focused target acquired, but have plenty of ranged target acquired options. While Fa's stats are balanced, he is now the best melee target acquired option. I hadn't really registered that. Okay. He is now the best melee target acquired option, but is still viable in other deck builds. Yeah, the balanced stats. A lot of newer players will have him at a higher level than I do, and higher level than some of their other cards. Hit points are good. Cost is good. We looked at a bunch of other 13 to 8 cost cards, and his hit points are a little bit higher than either at a lower level. So you get him up here, and his hit points are pretty respectable for that cost. So, yeah, it's fine. that's one where you're sort of filling in around the edges, and I feel like Necrons are a little bit more extreme and need less filler because they don't have any warlords who benefit you for losing cards. Which is where Eldari chaff cards kind of shine. Okay, we jump to Tau. We got this thing. This guy. Dorota Torrock. It's not just Necrons that have the hard stuff with the extra character. Kroot Farstalker. Trait change from Furious Charge to target acquired. We get another melee target acquired. I appreciate that for Tau, because melee Tau is a really fun kind of mechanical challenge to play in the game. Similar to Ronic Fa, where there are plenty of good range TA options available to Tau, there's none for melee. Again, not a common choice, but Kroot decks are definitely popular. Hey, love it. By giving TA to the Farstalker, we're unlocking another support piece for the Tau melee and a trait that is core to the Tau identity as a whole. Yeah, it's cool. And to have something like a flanky scout melee piece be the one that gives you that target acquired is very Tau and very Kroot. Love it. Love to see it. And then, of course, we've got the Kroot Hound, which I keep enjoying how this guy's changed around. He's had a very storied career for having no name, and that that tickles me. Name unknown, Kroot Hound, +2 cost from 4 to 6, +10 wounds and +10 melee. Still keeping that new trait of Furious Charge, which I've really enjoyed on him. He's a really fun card to play, but here's where I get held up on this guy, is I really love melee Tau decks, but most of those end up using the cheaper Tau cards. So you load up on your Kroot, and then you have 100 deck points to spend. I'd love to see another Krootox or something you could help kind of fill that in, or once I get this guy leveled up, because we got a new Krootox. But it's tricky building that very Tau-focused deck when you fill up your card pool so quickly with the cheap cards, and I want to run a lot of them. So we'll get to that in a second. But it's pretty cool. Similar to the Aspect Warriors, the Kroot Hound just wasn't able to achieve a lot at its price point of 4. He's competing directly with your taunt drones that are just going to be played so much more. And yes, you get +10 wounds, +10 melee. Added to the competition at that cost with a host powerful support drones. There it is. It's no surprise the Hound is struggling. So by increasing the cost, the Hound steps out of that drone-associated price point and can do a lot more in the field with the added wounds and, importantly, damage. It's still not a spectacular damage. It's one of those cards where you have to play it at the right time and have it at a moment where your opponent has something sensitive to hit. Tau also don't benefit very much from losing cards, especially since they have so much taunt drones to take that up. So you have to have this guy be impactful in some other way. You could have him either taking damage in an On-Va deck or taking up space in a Farsight deck, or being part of your Cadence in a Farsight deck, being one of the cards you want to play to thin your deck but want to lose quickly so you can get to the healing and play Farsight himself in the end game. So I'd like him. I want him to work. I don't know if he's there, but it's not his fault. He's a good boy, you Kroot Hound. All right, next up we have Encore Proc. That name I actually knew. This is one of the more expensive ones, and so one I'm very excited to, or am I mixing up with that one? Where are you, buddy? I'm going right by him, aren't I? I'm looking at the picture too. He's got a hood. Do I not have this guy? Surely not. He's right here. That's not him. Oh, he got a skin change since this release. That's why. Nope, not that one. Nope. All right, we're doing the search. Really? That guy? Okay. Minus 20 wounds, +10 melee. My bad. I'm sorry it took me so long to find that. The Kroot Carnivore Longquill. One of the more interesting ones being at that 16 cost with great hit points and then decent melee, which bumps up very nicely at that higher level. Talking of Kroot damage, for the most part, they underperform against the raw damage output of their Tau allies. Yeah, the range damage is way over it. While Anchor Proc has a serious amount of wounds available, really that comes at the cost of any meaningful damage output. So trimming off a few wounds for a good chunk more damage should make a difference. And I appreciate this starting there, because even at the higher wound pool, he didn't have enough wounds to really benefit from On-Va's rule, so he still needs to be a little bit of a chaffy card, so hitting harder at the outset is a nice bump. That is funny that his skin had changed since this update came out. There's been a lot of little changes, and some not so little ones coming out fairly quickly. Like, I'm still getting used to the new Vespid skin, and that's been in for a while. Let's see, Servants of the Emperor. This is an interesting one. Servants of the Emperor, looking at, and look, right out of the gate, this guy. And a lot of this was just sort of quietly dropped in there where there was no announcement, nothing like, look at our new artwork. I was just suddenly like, who's that guy? And it's one of the cards I've used since the very beginning of the game. And that's a little bit heartbreaking. I overuse that too much, but it's a little bit sad losing that familiar face and getting this guy, even though I have seen that familiar face die so many times. So Draskaz, I'm glad you're still with us. Your new model's very nice. but the old guy will always have a place in my heart. But yes, we're going to go ahead and look at this guy who's gotten a good bit more expensive. This is Damien 1427, got minus 30 wounds. Wow. And gained plus 15 base melee, and his trait changed from Berserk to Deathblow, which is much more appropriate for the way that you play this card. Being a cheap Chaffee card, having Berserk made no sense, even in even in some of the really defensively minded decks. He just didn't have time to build up enough damage to justify that. Berserk, I never used it. But in a faction that loves sacrificing cards for benefit, having Deathblow is a great perk on this one. Let's see. Low cost Berserk just doesn't work all that well, particularly in a faction geared towards sacrificing cheap cards. Yep. It does kind of work in a Rakarth deck because you're building up hit points and can keep the Berserk cards in the deck until later. But even then, it's a big challenge. I think Berserk as a trait has some possibly tweaking to do because I love the concept of a cheap Berserk card, but the execution always, I don't know. I think there's something there, but I'd love to see what happens. Okay, as such, we're swapping the Arco-Flagellant over to Deathblow to perfectly fit that role, and to match the trait change, we're swapping a decent amount of wounds over to melee, which is better. I mean, if you're already going to play the sacrificial card, of course it makes sense to have it do more damage, even if you just play it to lose it, than to have more wounds, so it takes longer to actually benefit from the trait. So yeah, perfect. Love the change. I may use the card now. We'll see. Okay, and then we're going to Chaos. This change had me very excited. We're looking at, and he's in the wrong place now, so I don't know where to find him. Where are you, buddy? This guy. Nauseous Rotbone, one of the staples of every single Chaos deck I ever run, because you just can't justify not taking him once you have him at high level. Plague Surgeon of the Death Guard being your primary Medicae option for any old hat players of Chaos. -2 cost, went from 16 to 14, which now puts him favorably cheaper than the card that's just better. So I really appreciate it. This guy is just a better version. Once you get him up here, he's just better in every single possible way, including he was 1 point cheaper. Now being 1 point more expensive, it makes quite a bit more sense because he also has much lower melee and does have fewer hit points. Let me just say he's better in every way except these two. Anyway, but yeah, so I really appreciated this change because we're looking at some other Medicae cards that outshine this guy. He's still very, very good for the utility, and Chaos really needs him to be cheaper because you really need to pack Chaos decks with your good, powerful pieces. And this guy was just as expensive enough where he was kind of necessary to most powerful builds, but also took up just enough space that you really sacrificed to bring him in there. Okay, Chaos definitely has a bit of a premium on Medicae, and the Plague Surgeon, despite being one of the cheapest options, is one of the least popular. What are you guys doing out there? It's fine. You know, you do you. It's fine. Reducing his cost should make him more appealing, or as appealing as a Nurgle Surgeon can be. I really was staring a little bit too long at the, mouth grubs. With him now being the cheapest option for Medicae. Oh yeah, and give support to Chaos Melee with him now being the cheapest option for Medicae. Yes. This should also balance against him being the only Medicae in the faction with only one attack type. True. Yeah. Because one of the other alternatives, for a long time it was just him and then Fabulous. And Fabulous comes in at 30 points, especially having lost Poison and traded Poison for Anti-Infantry. He's still a really powerful card, especially once you get him leveled up a bit. Especially being legendary, he can be an incredibly powerful Tarpity piece. But he's 30 points for a Medicae. So you'd run him and this guy, and that's more than half your deck. And it's still close to more than half your deck, but noticeably cheaper to the point where you can build a lot more flexibly, and gaining some other Medicae cards in the middle, notably that guy, also really helps kind of balance that out. There are also a lot of interesting cards in Chaos that I just never play because they don't necessarily make sense, and this is another one. I'm curious to try again now. Grizz Guttage. Gross. Scrivener of Nurgle. Cheap Inspiring Presence options for Chaos are also quite limited, and the Scrivener also falls into this category of an older, perhaps outdated Nurgle card. A price decrease fulfills the same purpose as the Plague Surgeon change, and loosens up access to better, cheap support options for the faction. It's cool to see this because there was a newer edition of this guy that has shields, and was previously 2 points cheaper. So now they're the same cost. This guy's going to end up with higher melee and more hit points versus the I don't know how he's going to compete with Holy Magadella, actually. Holy Magadella, I mean, being epic is going to level very slowly. So being the common, people should have access to this guy earlier. And if you're going Nurgle theme, it'll work out. But again, it's a tricky one to see how that's going to measure up against the better options unless you take both. So let's see, max. We're looking at 37. Yikes, those stats are terrible, buddy. Versus 53. And has a ranged attack, and I think actually has more wounds even with the shields. Yeah, okay. At the same cost? Well, you know what? It's fine. It's fine. Yeah. Now we're looking at cards added to the general card pool. We've got our Forge World Nightwing. We've got Muncha Cruncha, one of the two orc Squigoth. This one, the new one with the old artwork. Then we've got, a Sister of Battle, who I don't think I have, being the Seraphim. Why am I messing with me? Not that one, the other Seraphim, this one, Scary Seraphim. Ooh, target acquired, nice. And then, of course, we've got Garantius, the Green Knight, who's just a sweet freaking thing right here. We've got the new Mausoleum, and I pulled this in a pack the first day the season started. I was really excited about it. This guy, the Adeptus Sororitas Castigator, which is a Predator Leman Russ. I don't really know what to make of that, except it's a cool tank. Obviously, mine is only level 2, but I'm still excited to bust it out. It is cool to see some heavy firepower fleshed out in Sisters of Battle, so you can do theme heavy decks now. So you can really go ham with Morven Vol, and I think she's a cool character. Nice to have a little bit of supporting pieces there. Then we've got the other Seraphim, who I just looked at. Then we've got the other Murder Plane. This thing. This is the Jeebus. This thing scares the pants off me. That's a nasty, nasty thing. In Tyranids, we've got a couple cards I'm very eager to get, this being the main one. This is a card I really want. Like that combination of stats and abilities, this sucker is hard to get rid of. And has a bunch of psychic and also has the bonus of having that big game hunter in there too. Very potent card. I want this one. This is Mordecai Drevender, but then there's also the other Rock Grinder, which actually did pop in a pack. The one that's pointed the other way, that one. Obviously, I got this one in a pack too, and it's the Taunt vehicle coming at 32 points. It's nice to have some other taunt options for Tyranids, but this one is well, it's pricey. We'll upgrade it while we're here. Then we've got the Space Marine Redemption, the Scary Land Raider. In the 60 cost range, I believe, the classic white Land Raider. And I'm jumping around too much, so we'll go ahead and talk about this a little bit. And everybody, I believe, has seen the Scary White Land Raider. If you've seen it, you know that one. Oh, Scary White Land Raider. And then we've got Brother Corbulo, the Sanguinary High Priest. There it is. Another one I believe I do not have, and he is. Do I have Corbulo? Really? Look at that. I do. Look at that. Cool. No, Medicaid region, gnarly. But yeah, so there we go. That's the balance changes. Now we're going to go ahead and jump to the other article. I know this is a lot. It's a lot to cover at once. I'm trying to remember the artwork changes too. Let's see if I can remove all the filters and just run through. We shouldn't have any Warlord artwork changes. Those would really stand out. Lord Solar. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to go through every single card and just chatter my head off while we go through here because I don't want to miss anyone. Of course, we got Drazkez. Yes, thank goodness. For a minute there, I was worried I got his name wrong, and with a card I've had so close to my heart for this long, that would be bad. And when you play this game a lot, it is pretty funny how jarring these artwork changes can be. I think you've seen my reaction to a couple of these happen a few times. Sometimes they can fly under the radar, like that Kroot one that I just missed, and I think I just went right by him. But other times they just really jump out immediately, and you're like, wait a minute. What is this thing with this card I've been using forever? Like, I think this guy. No, that's the easy new one. There's a Space Marine that really threw me for a loop the other day. There's a lot to go through, but we're getting there, guys. We're getting there. A lot of cool new cards, a lot of cool new artwork going around. We all just got gobboed to heck. This thing is new. There's a ton of stuff I'm really not getting much chance to experiment with because it's so low level. I'm very excited to see those cards. This one. Ah, yeah, the new horse. Like, oh, goodness, what a thing. I talked about him a little bit, of course, the Fire Dragon, with the Lord Solar video I did not too long ago, but still, that artwork it's pretty cool. But again, like I really miss the lumpy old iconic thing because I was just so familiar with it. I'm sure I've missed some, but Maybe not. There's just a bunch. There are a bunch, but also some were just subtle. God, I love the Night Lords. The Night Lords kill team models are just so gnarly, and they're really good cards too. This guy is not. There's a Space Marine that's still. I'm gonna stop freaking out about the Space Marines. Max level. That still feels weird. First one I have, and still, even after I was excited about that, the first one I have, although I have others on track to get there. And it is funny, once it starts happening, it's like 6 or 7 of my commons are going to go within a week or something. Now I jinxed it. We're into the 18 range. Got this guy. Looks a little newer, but I don't think it's a new model. I think it's actually a new card. Come on, artwork. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I've seen these all pop up. This one's just a new card. This guy is going to get there. He's real close to that max level. Of course, all the gobos. And there have been a lot of new cards released recently, and a lot of cards that I didn't have I've gotten through a bunch of packs and them being added to the general card pool, which is cool, but it's also really knocked down my card level progression. But then wild cards have kind of helped that up in that narrow focused way. So it's been cool. This is a really interesting moment for the game. Got this guy to 9, still excited about that. I've barely gotten a chance to play him because I'm just experimenting all the time. Card changes, we're almost into the 30s. We're getting close to half, especially since the bulk of the cards are in the cheaper range. This will start going faster. But I'm also getting to the point where I'm starting to make mistakes, and I'm sure I'm missing some. Yeah, holler if you see any jump out. I know we're about to see, we're about to see the 35-point Phoenix Lords, who of course have changed. We just talked about that. Pardon my French. That was very rude. Pardon my burp. Yeah, we got Baharoth over there, and it's really kind of a fishy thing to keep track of, because once the artwork changes for a lot of these cards, you get familiar with the new artwork so quickly that some of these I don't recognize as new artwork, even though it is. And then, of course, the others that I'm very attached to really stand out. So here we are, getting down to the almost the end, and the more expensive cards, you're less likely to see the artwork change, but we might. We'll see. I don't see any changes in any of these just yet, so speed up a little bit, and I almost certainly will miss something, but oh yeah. Oh man, very satisfying. Just the scrolling. Ooh, let's do it. I've been waiting for multiple levels of poison in this guy forever. I didn't even notice when I got the last level of him. Oh yeah, level 7. Great unclean one. It is time for some Nurgle-themed hijinks. All right. And we're at the end. All right, cool. All right, and then next up we've got, these articles are much shorter, so this should go again, and we may actually get some actual games in here. So we're looking at patch notes from the 23rd, January 23rd. Version 38.14 is now live, bringing a new modifier. And to be really clear, when you're talking about a modifier, that's something that pops up in campaigns. It's these, not something that's in the total deck. So this threw me for a loop. When I read this, I was like, wait, really? You can do that now? But this new modifier is, a new modifier has been introduced, expanding the deck editor and allowing bodyguards to take up to 4 extra, or players to take up to 4 extra bodyguards, meaning instead of building a deck with 8, you can go up to 12. This change aims to provide more flexibility when creating decks and opens up the room for further improvements. And now again, this is a modifier we're going to see in some campaigns, not something we're going to see to all games, but we might potentially see something like that happen in Apocalypse. Because in the Apocalypse mode, let's just take a look just in case. In the Apocalypse mode, there's just not, you end up building decks that are suboptimal because the build you want includes cards that don't add up to 400 points. So if you could add more cards in the same theme, potentially you could build more interesting Apocalypse decks that could be just beat to heck by some other decks out there. It could be balanced. So it's interesting to see. I'm curious to see if that modifier is going to make it to general play, or if it's just going to stay a campaign modifier. Either way, having that as an optional modifier also opens up the opportunity to have a warlord that has an expanded card pool. For example, there's something we could do with that. Or there may be, not going to speculate. We'll leave it at that. Okay, next up is the new banner for card packs. We've added a new banner feature to card packs. When previewing the contents of a pack, a banner will now highlight which cards are new to you. Makes it easier to identify newly available cards that you haven't collected yet. I believe that means when you're opening cards, there's a banner even before you flip them that tells you if the card is new or not, which is very exciting. I love that. It adds to that excitement. Visually scale rewards. Now, I actually missed this when I first read it, but I'm going to show it in a minute. Actually, let's just do it. It is that whenever you claim rewards, they're going to fill up the screen no matter how many cards you have. So if you have just one card on a page, it's no longer that disappointing little thumbnail. It's now this great big thing with this glowing purple border that's like, yes, it's an epic, it's awesome. And I get the emotional response to this is very strong, even though I know exactly what that is because it just clicked on a guaranteed reward. Still great to see Kerboom, and the artwork then is much more highlighted too, so it's cool. I really enjoy that. The first card I saw that with after missing it in the patch notes was a legendary, so I was like, oh, be still my heart. I'm sorry, too excited. Okay, and then next up, yeah, automatic scaling in the reward screen so you can see your rewards at the maximum size possible. No more tiny cards when there's just one reward. Yeah, which is especially cool if you're in the card shop. You buy something here, you're like, yay, I got 5 copies of the thing, and it's just meh, meh, meh. Or if you're opening something from the ladder rewards and it's just plasma or just gold, you're like, yay, I got 15 plasma, hooray. What are we going to play here? What are we going to play in Apocalypse? Not Space Marine, because we're not in the thing. We are going to play little Zephyr Blade. And I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate a little bit what I mean here, because what I want to do is run the new buffed up cards, especially the ones that got buffs to ranged attack, which is basically the one. Going to be my Reaper Exarch, this guy right here. And then you know what, we could throw this guy in here too. And this is Zephyr Blade, who wants cards to die somewhat at a reasonable time. And let's see what else we're going to throw in here. I'll throw my Fire Dragon in there because he's real high level, and Big Game Hunter is good at this level. We'll throw our expensive Taunt, and then we have 330 deck points to spend. Good thing we have a lot of very expensive cards. We throw in the Psychic ones to handle a little bit of extra barrage, and then I still have 156. Yikes. See what I mean? See what I'm talking about here, where you can build the decks that you want, and obviously this is Apocalypse mode, so, it makes sense that things have to be built differently. But to have this much of a disconnect between what you want to build and what you have in those deck points, it's off-putting isn't quite the right word, but it's one of those things where it's just like, I have to drop this guy so I don't actually get to test him. Yeah, it's just enough of a bummer to be a bummer. All right, 38. There, yeah, we'll throw you in there. Yeah, it's gonna be a nasty deck. I hope that I have really high Apocalypse trophies so that the average player does not go up against me in Apocalypse, because Apocalypse is even more of a divider between new players and old hat players, because the more cards you put in a deck, and especially the more expensive cards, the more obvious it is. Oh, nuts. I haven't played any Eldari this week at all. The more dramatic the power disparity can be between an experienced player and a new player, just because a new player could have a couple cards at high level, but they're not going to have an entire deck of cards at like high level. Oh, no, sir. No, we are not playing at speed 2. That's a weird one, too, where my game speed changes a bit. Although I don't know if that was saved from the last time I played on computer, because it's been a minute. But yeah, so like right here, these are all trait rank 1 cards. I haven't lost a card yet. I'm just running roughshod over this and building up just a spectacularly high attack because I'm building up so much. Yeah, easy win. Easy win. Not that I was doubting too much that I was going to win, but, pow, pow. It would be, can I do it? Oh yeah, let's do it. Punch him. Some of my favorite memories are still playing tabletop when I was fairly new to Warhammer on the tabletop, and I would have somebody like Eldrad run around and kill Space Marine Terminators in melee. And this that little ghost metal, the solid metal pewter Eldrad from back in the day, killed a lot of champions and scary units that he had no business at all fighting in melee, let alone actually beating. This is pretty cool. We're going to talk about one other thing here too while I'm playing. And we're going to mix this up a bit. Yeah, we can go Illic. Yeah, let's go Illic. Greetings, citizens. It's been a while since we last ran an energy campaign, and we know how many of you missed them. While energy campaigns are not ready for a full return, we're running a test campaign on Monday, January 27th. I will note the campaign pictured is the Pariah Crusade, which starts in 2 days. So I don't know what happened there. I didn't see any announcement past this one, but yeah. This test will help us evaluate recent updates and gather the data we need to address some of the long-standing technical challenges that led to their pause. By running this campaign in a live setting, we aim to gather fresh logs, monitor performance, and identify the next steps. Now, I was out of town and traveling quite a bit this weekend, so I may have just missed that. Um, but yeah, I'm seeing this up in a couple days, not something that ran this past Monday, but maybe I missed it. I'd love to hear it if I did. What to expect is rewards adjustments. We're aware that it might not run perfectly, so we'll distribute the rewards more evenly across players. However, the top spots will still earn a bigger reward, so there's a reason to fight for it. No refunds for lost energy. Ooh. To simplify things during this test, we won't issue refunds for lost energy. Yeah, okay. We're excited to see how this test plays out and appreciate your patience and support as we continue working on the. Yeah, I personally have really enjoyed campaigns the way they are. I think I made some commentary about missing that sort of like energy charge or how it felt less like it felt more grindy. But on the whole, I really like the way they are, and I'm a little bit probably a little wishy-washy on that. That's probably the exact opposite of what I've said before in a video. Hopefully not too much, but things happen. Can we do it again? Punch him. Yeah, there we go. Punch him. Kick him. Right in the shins. Kick him with your shins, I guess, in that case. Okay. We're basically out of things to say at that point. We are looking at the Warp Spider season, so I'm really interested to see kind of where the season goes, and there's some promise that we're going to get something else. We've got a new Eldari Codex, and I believe the new Eldari Codex has a Supreme Commander in it, but I haven't looked that up. I'm curious who that would be. My assumption, of course, is going to be the Avatar, which was my assumption all along, but no, I'm actually going to look that up real quick while we're here and while this is having a little bit of a loading hiccup. Eldari Supreme Commander. Something from 2 years ago, something from 2022. Hmm. We'll look at 2025 Eldari Codex, and it may not have actually hit the tables yet. I'm always confused about when the preview happens versus when it actually launches. Eldari Codex. Leaks. So from 6 days ago, he's had a bunch of leaks. So it hasn't come out yet, so we have not even seen the Supreme Commander, but the cover image of the Codex sure does appear to be Fuegan. I wonder if Fuegan is going to be... Ooh, here we go. Launch day is February 8th, which should be during this season. We're looking at next week, so we may have some exciting news about an Eldari Supreme Commander. I wonder who it's going to be. It may be a character we don't know about yet. We've seen some leaks and previews, but there may be other stuff going on. Codex Eldari. Read more. Yeah, I guess we'll see. All right. And of course, Harry and the Warhammer Combat Cards folks may probably have a bit of a preview because they have to design these suckers in advance, but they will be very tight-lipped about it and won't tell us anything. Which of course they shouldn't. They shouldn't ruin the surprise, shouldn't, damage that point there, but I want to know. I'm curious. But also the anticipation is nice, so let's enjoy the anticipation. I say, trying to convince myself to enjoy the anticipation. I will say one thing about the apocalypse modes that's been really funny to watch myself just psychologically is I get really into playing and experimenting with a bunch of factions, and all of a sudden I'm like, why are my trophies not going up? It's because I'm playing with 9 factions instead of playing with the ones I should be. So, yeah, even then I just lost like, 250 trophies, which would have put me to the top because I'm just mucking around with different factions too much. It has been fun to see how high I can get just playing 1 or 2 factions into the trophy count, because you really can just keep going. I've really been loving Apocalypse mode. It's a very casual, very like low-key way to play, and I really enjoy it. Although it generally has been quite easy, there have been several moments where I've experimented with something quirky and been like, this is fun, and got just stomped. So it's not always easy, and it's not necessarily guaranteed to be easy, which I enjoy that variety and that little bit of surprise there. That's always nice. And we're going to play one more game. Just go ahead and play through it, and then I will go ahead and sign off for the night because this has gotten quite long. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this. Hopefully this is a fun moment for Warhammer Combat Cards. I am going to switch over to doing a lot more coverage of X-Wing coming up soon because that is one of my big goals for the year. And it's a very interesting and exciting year for X-Wing miniatures. So we will be talking about that soon. And then we're kind of re-examining what we're going to do with the channel. I haven't been posting as many videos because we've had a lot of things to do coming up here. Professionally, I've got some really interesting things going on, so we're going to go ahead and be exploring and experimenting stuff a bit. So you probably won't see me releasing videos at the same regularity. I still want to do guides for every single Supreme Commander as they come out. I really enjoy doing those. I want to do patch notes when those come out because that's one of my favorite things. I love patch notes. And just whenever there's kind of an info dump to tackle, I'll definitely cover that as available, of course. But yeah, it's been really fun. I've really been enjoying this. I don't want to stop doing the fun gaming YouTube stuff at all. So hopefully that helps if anyone was really concerned there. Um, but yeah, just trying to make sure it stays fun and healthy and doesn't get overboard. This is got some chunky, scary, shooty guys. But of course, the Eldari initiative and Illic being just bananas. Illic is incredibly powerful in Apocalypse just because you can bring so many heavy hitting cards and they hit harder, and being able to free remove that free removal at low wounds is a lot more powerful based on the overall power of the card you're removing. And so it can be really scary what you're able to just pull off the board with Illic. That may just kill that outright, case in point. And I wonder if, ooh, that's not what I meant to push, but that's okay. Yep, there it is. Knocked that off. Not quite. I was wondering if I was going to be able to punch through the shields on that one. And this is where that dead shot is a downside. A bug, not a feature. A space bug. Okay, and there we go. So really appreciate the time, really appreciate the patience. Hopefully this has been fun. I had fun, and we will see each other soon.